am curious though, because if you read people like Shoshana Zuboff in her book Surveillance Capitalism, one of her cases for why we should care about our data being captured by these companies is, and this is gonna sound creepy and don't think I'm doing conspiracy theory stuff, but it's behavior control, which is the more data I give away to these massive algorithmic machines, nodes of machines interconnected, crunching the data that I've given them, the more of that I give away, the better those machines get at manipulating my behavior, telling me what to buy, telling me what to think, telling me how to be. And I think this rubs against people because they think I'm a free individual and a machine couldn't possibly be smarter than I am and convince me to buy things and do things. But I just want you to weigh in there. Do you think that AI is shaping people's behavior?
Oh, there's no question. I don't think it. We all know. Well, anybody who studies this stuff knows it. It's happening. If you like, social media platforms are designed to be used as much as possible. So the only evidence we need to see that AI sounds like creepy and like futuristic, but really it's just really complicated math. Like, it's not like they're like literal robots controlling our minds, but it's just mathematical equations that are being used to shape our psychology.
But they're intelligent algorithms, right? They're changing and editing themselves to accomplish a goal, which is selling your information to advertisers who want you to buy their stuff.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. But they are designed by humans. Now, very much so. They've become a sort of Frankenstein's monster in that you have these companies like engineers within social media companies will say they don't quite understand how these things work that they create. It's like they set off a reaction and there continue to be chain reactions following the initial creation that so many of these software engineers and behavioral psychologists that work for these companies, they kind of start the process. And these platforms have sort of morphed to the fact that a lot of times, like I've read kind of leaked documents from Facebook or Twitter even, that you'll have employees recorded as saying, yeah, we don't really know why the algorithm or the artificial intelligence, the machine learning platforms that we've created, we don't really know why they're changing and doing this. We're trying to figure it out. And it's like, yeah, we might have a problem here. And I think the other thing is like, that's the other thing that we need to be reminded of, or maybe recognize if we've never known it before, is that you have incredibly, like, I would go as far to say some of the smartest behavioral psychologists in the world are employed at these social media companies.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, it's creepy.
Not just a bunch of coders. Yeah. It's not just a bunch of coders and techies. You have Sean Parker. If you've ever seen The Social Network, Sean Parker is Justin Timberlake in The Social Network, the movie about the beginning of Facebook. And Sean Parker, so the character that Justin Timberlake plays.
By the way, I want Justin Timberlake to play my character.
I know, compliment. Seriously. Like, what a great, and they don't really look alike. Like, I get why they picked Justin Timberlake because the hair was kind of similar and stuff. But so he was the first president of Facebook, and he really helped Facebook kind of scale and get off the ground in a lot of the early days. He also started Napster. So I thought it was kind of ironic that they picked a musician to play the guy who started Napster, but that's another conversation.
That's fun.
So back in 2017, he did an interview with Mike Allen of Axios, which Axios was actually just getting started at the time. And he said this in his interview with Mike Allen of Axios, Sean Parker, first president of Facebook. The thought process that went into building these applications, Facebook being the first of them, was all about how do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible. And that means that we need to sort of give you a little dopamine hit every once in a while because someone liked or commented on a photo or a post or whatever. And that's going to get you to contribute more content. And that's going to get you more likes and more comments. It's a social validation feedback loop. Exactly the kind of thing that a hacker like myself would come up with because you're exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology. The inventors, the creators, it's me, Mark Zuckerberg, Kevin Systrom on Instagram. It's all of these people. We understood this consciously and we did it anyway. Now, this is Sean Parker kind of regretting the monster that he's contributed to and created, got off the ground over almost 2 decades ago. And I think that's what we have to realize is going on, is these platforms are created to get us to spend as much time on them as possible. So the math, the AI, the machine learning that's at the core of them is not only trying to get us to click and buy, they're also trying to keep us looking at them, trying to keep our eyes on them. And the only evidence you need to see that our behavior is being modified is not only that internet company revenues are way up because these ads are working, but also our time on these platforms are way up. And as much as selling us things is an objective of this artificial intelligence, keeping our attention is as much an objective. So if you just watch social media time online over the years, you can see that steadily increase, which I think is just the easiest evidence you would need to know that it's working.
Well, I mean, you just ask yourself a question. Are the marketing teams of today's biggest consumer good companies, are they run by idiots? And if the answer to that question is no, then you have to ask, why are they spending the vast majority of their money on these platforms? Answer, it works. They can control your behavior. They can alter your behavior. And it's disturbing to admit, but I think actually as Christians, we have the resources to come into this and say, oh no, this makes perfect sense. We understand that as a result of the fall, we in our hearts are easily manipulated by our desires. We're easily manipulated by external forces and powers. And we literally have a term, the world, systems and structures that are able to control and alter human behavior. So we have categories for these things. And yet I find that amongst many Christians, I think out of pride, we resist the notion that, yeah, my iPhone controls me. Now, you kind of got into a second thing here, which is if they want to sell us these ads, they have to keep us on their platforms. And so that's a whole different question, right? So on the one hand, you're gathering all my data, you're selling it off to people so that they can manipulate my behavior. And I realize some people think it's like a really cynical take. And, I guess you could say that about all marketing's a form of manipulation. Sure, I get it. But that is what's happening. And then they say, hey, we've got to keep you on our platform so that we can sell you more ads and collect more data. So how does that happen? How do these companies, Meta, Google, how do they keep us on their platforms?
Sure. And let me say first, before we move on from like the marketing and sales piece, I don't think it's objectively and totally wrong to like use social media for marketing. Like I think I don't want to say that like it's a morally corrupt enterprise. I think my biggest concern is that so many of us users don't recognize what's happening to us. Does that make sense? So like, I don't think it's wrong for like, I'm sure the company that I work for, Moody Publishers, I'm sure we use Facebook ads to try to help people find books that they would find helpful based on their interests and things like that. Yeah. But I do think that there needs, I think the social media companies have been in the wrong for a number of years for not more clearly disclosing and making it easy for people to decide what privacy knobs they want to turn on or off. and so I think that's one of my biggest concerns. It's not like, I don't think the whole, you should never use social media to advertise. Like, I don't think it's objectively wrong, but I do think that there's a sort of being taken advantage of that's been happening, a sort of deception that I think the whole enterprise needs to be shoved more into the light. And not done in such a sort of shadowy way. So let me just be clear on that.
No, I think that's really good, and I want to circle back to that because I do want to have that conversation, and I strongly agree with everything that you just said. But again, I want to make sure that people are tracking what you also said, which is, hey, here's all I want. I want people to be educated. So I want people to know what's happening with their data, and I want them to have control over it. And that's a massive problem because even in the moments where Facebook and Google and all these other companies have come along and given people privacy, quote unquote, privacy rights, it's been proven time and time again that you can think you're turning the faucet off, and Facebook just leaves the faucet on.
That's exactly right.
And so you can't even trust these companies. They're deceptive down to their core. And again, I know it sounds really cynical. Just once you start reading, you really can't escape. Like, that's what it is. But let's get back to the platforms. How do they keep us on these platforms? What's the strategy for keeping us on? And what do you think that's causing?
Yeah. So this goes more from the sort of code and AI side. This is certainly used to keep us on the platforms, to more of the behavioral psychology side. So upfront, I'm not a psychologist, so I'm just, whatever I say here has been recited from things that I've read from people much smarter than me on these subjects. But generally speaking, it's what Sean Parker described. You get on a social media platform. As soon as you download the platform onto your phone, even if you had an account, you sign in, they say you want to turn on notifications so you can see when all your friends comment or message. Well, of course, like, why wouldn't I turn on notifications? So, I don't know what the percentage is, but a high percentage of people always, hit allow for notifications. Then, let's say it's Instagram, you hop on Instagram and you want to share a story, and it's like, hey, you want to share your location with Instagram? And so you say, yeah, because I want to tell people like where I'm at in my Instagram story. So I'm going to share my location, and I'm going to give them access to all my library photos. And then you go on, you post your story or your photo or whatever. And then because you've turned on notifications, however popular you are, or in a broken view, however valuable you are, as I fear we've kind of come to this point, you get little pings of vibrates of your phone. If you have your sound on, you get sounds that could be, it could sound like you've just scored a coin in a video game, depending on, how you set up these sort of reward systems, if you will, where you get a buzz, you get a sound notification, an audible notification. You go to your phone and you see this red 8 above your, wow, 8 people responded to my Instagram story. That's amazing. I usually only get like 3 responses in the first 30 minutes. And then you start, all of these things are brain signals. They're just really, it is like, you and I have connected before of our love for playing video games. I'm still working through the one you got me, by the way. It's a mammoth game and it's crazy that you gave that to me. But like, anyone who understands video games understands the sort of like gamification idea that like you go on these quests, you get rewards, you feel satisfied because you fulfilled an obligation. And social media really plays into that idea, the sort of gamification of attention, where you post something, you get rewarded with visual feedback, audible feedback, social feedback. And it's this loop that takes place where, the apps will ping you if you're like, hey, you haven't posted in a while. Have you considered posting? I've gotten a notification from Facebook recently that's like, hey, such and so just posted a new story. What's your reaction? I'm like, why do I have to have a reaction? Like, I don't feel anything about what this person posted. I haven't talked to that person in 6 years, let alone clicked on any of their Facebook stuff. So
it's like a casino in your pocket, and all of a sudden, the casino that you've ignored for months and months on end, the maitre d comes out and finds you like, hey, you want to come back? You interested?
Yeah, right.
In
Here's a free
again?
night, like, yeah. So it's like how they keep us on is by these sort of engagement and social feedback loops where there's reward for express. So here's the thing, like this ties into the the privacy conversation, because in order for us as users to be valuable to the social media platforms, we have to express ourselves. Like social media platforms, I've never read this, but I'm guessing like their enemy, the person they hate, is the person who uses social media, like consumes but never creates, because we're not giving them, as if you don't create any, if you never post to Instagram, you never post to Twitter, they can learn a lot from you based on what you consume, but they could learn a whole lot more from you if you create, if you post. And so the more we post, the more we express ourselves, the more information we're giving. And in return, we don't get paid money, we get paid attention. This is why I frequently say attention is the currency of the social internet. So we are the employees of Facebook and Instagram and all these others, because we generate their content for them that they then sell ads on. It's almost like we work for a news company like the New York Times, but instead of writing 800-word articles, we write 200-word Facebook posts with a photo of our family, and then Facebook sells ads on that content, and we get paid not $5 because we got 300 comments. We get paid in 300 comments, which then makes us feel good and makes us want to go back and do it again.